I'm Sheriff Monty Ballou with the Henry County Sheriff's Office. We're wanting you to start a safety and security ministry. There's all types of ministries to get involved in your church. And recent polls show that 75% of all churches have some type of safety and security team. We want you to get involved. There are 3 basic steps that you need to follow to get a safety and security team started in your church. Number 1, establish a head of security. You want this person that's going to be head of your security, someone that is experienced in either prior military experience, maybe prior law enforcement, or current law enforcement. Someone with a good common sense, level head, definitely not a rookie position. This is not someone that you want to put in that position. Number 2, conduct a risk assessment. ID the risk and vulnerabilities of your church. They may be something as complicated as a security issue with the child care program, or it may be something as simple as a broken handrail or fixing something on the playground. And the third thing that you need to do is train all your staff and volunteers, and not just once, but on a regular basis. It won't happen here. Philosophy needs to be broken. Everyone on the safety and security teams needs to be alert and be trained at all times. Always be alert. Next up, there'll be several deputies talking to you about a variety of topics, hopefully to help you improve your safety and security team. And always, if we can ever help you at the Henry County Sheriff's Office, don't hesitate to call.
Hello, my name is Scott Wyrick. I'm a lieutenant for the Henry County Sheriff's Office. I'd like to discuss a few issues with you today about some things that are overlooked when we talk about church security. These areas include first aid, CPR, emergency situations such as tornadoes, fire, evacuation drills you'll have to do within your church. These areas are often overlooked because we have the mindset to think about potential for violence, potential for property loss or damage or anything of that nature. First thing I'd like to talk about is to establish some sort of emergency planning team within your church or a crisis manager. That is vitally important. Somebody that you can reach out to, bounce ideas off of, somebody that can handle the situation that may arise. I suggest that you reach out to somebody with a background in first responders, fire department, medical personnel, whether it be a doctor or nurse or someone that runs an ambulance, something of that nature. So I suggest you reach out to them. Let's talk a minute about first aid. Does your church have funding available for a first aid kit? Is it properly displayed where everybody knows it is? I mean, if you have an incident, will each and every member know to go to this first aid kit and retrieve an item from it? So it's easily accessible to all the members. That's a critical area y'all need to consider. Is anybody in your church certified in CPR? These areas I talk about, first aid and CPR, if nobody at your church is certified in either of these areas, I suggest you send a couple members to be certified in these areas. Or if not, bring a certified first aid trainer or CPR trainer within your church and do it as a church as a whole. That's a great idea. Do you have an AED unit at your church? It's a device, it's an automatic emergency defibrillator is what AED stands for, but it's you hook it up to the person and it gives you the instructions and it does everything for you. So you just stand back and this device does the job. But a very important piece of equipment. I suggest if you have the funds available to purchase that within your church and have it properly displayed. 2 great resources we have here in Henry County is AeroVac and Vanderbilt's Life Flight. I highly recommend that you reach out to these organizations, have them come speak to your church. Have you ever considered where would be a good landing zone for one of these helicopters? It's very common for these helicopters to do what they call from the scene transport. They'll land right there on the scene. If you have a member or a visitor having a critical heart incident, they may fly him directly from the church, to Vanderbilt or wherever. So it's very important that y'all look at that, have them speak to your church and have a proper landing zone, for the rural churches that they could land the helicopter. Some other topics I'd like to discuss with you is severe weather and tornadoes. Does your church have established plans of where to go in the event of severe weather or tornadoes? establish a safe area within your church. Does your church have any kind of reunification program? If the children get separated from the parents, if whether it's a fire drill, an evacuation, or a tornado, what is your church's reunification plan to bring the family back together? It's very important in these instances, whether it be a tornado, fire, any kind of evacuation, that you have some sort of plan of action before the event, during the event, and after the event occurs. What about in the event of a fire? Again, we suggest you might want to contact your local fire department, have them come to your church, do an assessment, have them look at your ability to contain the fire, whether it be fire extinguishers or some sort of sprinkler system or anything of that nature. They could give great tips on that. So, I'd like to tell you to, invite them to your church. They'll come do a demonstration for y'all. What about power outages? What is your church's capabilities if your power should go out? Is there some sort of backup lighting system, flashlights, anything of that nature? That's very important. I've only briefly touched on some of these different areas, but most important thing to remember is to prepare and plan and create procedures. Once you establish these plans and these procedures, practice it where it comes second nature. You don't have to think to respond. You just automatically respond under any of these circumstances. Thank you for your time.
I'm Clyde Sulser. I'm a sergeant with the Henry County Sheriff's Office. I want to talk to you a little bit today about weapons in church. I know that people are permit holders now, and a lot of times you'll have people in your church that'll be permit holders that'll be carrying their weapons with them on during services, and that's completely legal in Tennessee. I think a lot of times was where we might mistake those people as instead of being private individuals, that some churches are tempted to use those people probably as armed security guards, or they put them in positions of authority in case something happens. If you place them in a position of authority to carry out that job, you're falling into under some state laws that you need to be aware of. Let's say I've got a church and I've got some parishioners I know that are concealed carry permit holders, and I decide I want to hire them as my armed security. And I don't want to go through all the training regulations and everything that the state mandates they have to. The church could actually be fined as operating a unlicensed security guard company by doing that. The fine can go up to $2,000 per incident. So let's say I had two people that I hired to be security, and I didn't have them go through those training and the requirements that the state had. You could be actually fined $2,000 per person, per incident, per day that you had them doing that. So we can see that would add up fairly quickly. And I know that that has been done. One of the biggest, in my research doing this, one of the biggest fines I saw a church got levied against was $40,000 for doing just that. If you have people that are carrying guns in church that are concealed carry permit holders or permit holders in Tennessee and licensed to do that, that's great. We encourage that. We think that everyone should be able to exercise their Second Amendment rights. However, those rights do not automatically make you an armed security guard. You're probably better off either having armed security from an armed security company or having off-duty police officers carry out those type duties. Armed security companies, armed security people have a lot of rules and regulations that they are bound, and training that they are bound to do by the state of Tennessee. And I would a lot rather, if you had someone that you were putting in authority and you're given an official position, they needed to be in an armed security company, or they can either be an off-duty police officer or retired police officer that's still in good standing with his retiring agency and keeps up his training. So those are the main points. I think if you want to have, you can go with two sides of the road. If you want to have no policy procedure actually written out and you just want to rely on that you do have some concealed carry people in your audience or in your parishioners, I think you're fine. You don't have to worry about doing anything if you don't have anything written out. The other end of the spectrum is if you do have a policy or people you're putting into authority in your church, they need to either meet those requirements of being armed security guards, armed security people, or they need to be retired or off-duty police officers that can legally take action.
Hello, I'm Damon Lowe. I'm captain with the Henry County Sheriff's Office. The days of thinking nothing could ever happen in your church or to the people your volunteers serve have long since ended. As a result, the subject of background checks has become a hot issue for churches today. To check or not to check? That's one of the many questions that children's ministries are asking. Are background checks really worth the trouble? How can I get my volunteers to see the need without offending their good intentions? How in the world do I ever get started? First off, what is a background check? A background check is just simply a records screening of an individual, and it can be as little as just your in-county check, or it can be in depth as a security clearance investigation. Public and private records can be searched. One applicant gives a consent for you to do so. Why do we want to do a background check? Background checks are designed to help all your ministries implement and maintain a thorough background screening program for their employees. Preventing sexual predators and violent offenders from working with your children and youth is a primary concern. A ministry that serves children and youth has the obligation to exercise due diligence with regards to protecting their members, especially the children. Children's ministries can be scarce, as we all know. They are hard to come by. And it may be very tempting to allow anyone that shows interest to serve in the child ministry to do so. Doing so opens up the door to people who might neglect or even sexually abuse our children in their care. That's why we should carefully screen all nursery staff and volunteers. So to protect your church and the children, get those background checks done.
Hello, I'm Randy Jean with Henry County Sheriff's Office, Chief Deputy. Today I want to talk to you about your tithes and offerings and how to protect them. Come down, take up the offering, go back to a room at the back of the church, lock the door, and in that room is a safe that is open. The next day, the treasurer and someone else will come, unlock the safe, take the money to a room, count it, and then take it to the bank. My advice to you on both cases is be more careful with your money. Even when you're making a deposit, you will take it to the bank, probably in a money bag. When you're walking across the street, either have it in your jacket, in your shirt, in a plastic bag. Don't make it obvious. If we could ever help you at Henry County Sheriff's Office, please give us a call.
Hello again. Captain Damon Lowe, Henry County Sheriff's Office. Your church and your insurance. Are you protected? By its very nature, a church is grounded in love. God's love for us, and in turn, the church's love for its members and the community makes churches unique and special. Because the very foundation of the church is goodness, it can be easy for the church administration not to focus on the unimaginable. It's a sad reality that churches do get sued every day by their members and their guests alike, despite the goal of spreading happiness and good news. For this reason, it is an important part of every church to have a very good insurance program. Most all churches have the standard coverage that covers incidents from slips and falls to flooding, thefts, and any kind of other building damage or vandalism. But here are two coverages that every church needs, but many currently do not have. One, the pastoral professional liability. One of the pastor's most important roles is to provide counseling and advice for their congregation. Often, these conversations entail topics that are very private and emotional and possibly life-altering. For this reason, every church should have professional liability to cover their ministers in the event of an accusation during the counseling. Remember, in the event of a lawsuit, you have to defend yourself, even if no wrongdoing occurred. Second type of insurance that most churches do not have: sexual abuse and molestation. While this topic is painful to discuss, every church is exposed to a possible accusation involving a sexual nature. A high number of churches do not have this policy, and there is no coverage under the general liability that will cover it. The reason that is many churches may not believe that something like this could ever happen in their congregation. But as we see every day, sexual crimes against children in the churches are on the rise. While it may not be true that something like this could happen in your church, the important part is that even if no crime committed, an accusation still be made and the church will have to defend itself. Without insurance coverage, even a false accusation of sexual abuse or molestation could easily close the church's doors. In the world we live in today, no institution is safe from liability, and churches are no different. Whether a ministry or church member truly committed a crime or a false accusation has been brought, every church must be prepared. By making sure your insurance has the special coverage needs, your church and you can have the peace of mind in knowing that you are protected if the unthinkable happens.
How you doing? Class Ulcer again. I'm a sergeant with the Henry County Sheriff's Office. I'm happy to be talking to you today about just being observant when you're in church. I think a lot of problems, a lot of things can be headed off just by us watching and seeing what's going on around us as we're going about our day. Don't always just get locked into doing the same things or being complacent as we're moving about. Simply watching what's going on around you, being aware of what's going on around you, knowing who is around you and what they're doing, and does that look right? In other words, if you're standing there and you're going to church, do people come in and sit in the pews and get out their hymn books, get out their Bibles, and they start paying attention, or they get out the notebooks to take notes of what their preacher is saying? Those are probably things I would expect people to do in church. Coming in church in the summertime in a long coat, carrying a big backpack, sweating profusely, doing things that look wrong. Sometimes when they look wrong, it might be because they are wrong. So we need to be aware of those things. You can go about your day and watch the people around you and be aware of what they're doing and not have any ill effects from that. That's a good thing to do. Think of it like you're driving. A good defensive driver knows the cars behind them and what they're doing, the cars next to them what they're doing, and the cars in front of them what they're doing. I think you could apply that same concept to when you're out walking around or going anywhere, whether it's going into a store, going to church, or going about your daily lives. That's a good thing to do. It's a good habit to get into.
Hello, I'm Trent Bullock. I'm the senior pastor at First Baptist Church in Paris, Tennessee. And I just want to share with you some of the things that we're doing here at our church in the area of safety and security. Recently, we have formed a safety and security team to help us put into place some procedures that will make sure that our folks are safe when they're here worshiping with us and attending activities at our church. Our focus has really been in three areas: personnel, procedures, and then equipment. As far as personnel is concerned, as a church staff, we have tried to be aware of the needs of our church, some of the threats that might pose a problem as far as security and safety is concerned. We've then encouraged our safety team, which is made up of men and women who have some background in law enforcement or military. We also include our ushers and some of our deacons, people who work with our preschool and children. We've included representatives from each of those areas on our safety and security team to try to put into place those procedures that we need to make our folks safe. So as we think about each of those areas, our ushers help us on Sunday mornings, our deacons help us as greeters. We have some procedures in place, whether it's Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, or a special event, about how we can make sure that we're covering all the area around our facilities when people are present. We help to train our folks to look for things that might be suspicious and then be ready to report that. We use procedures as far as how and when we lock doors, keeping in contact with one another through radios, having procedures in place when something does happen, maybe a medical emergency, making sure we get a call made as quickly as possible. We've done some other things regarding procedures as far as those who work with minor children in our church. We ask for them to be submit themselves to a background check, a national background check, before they work with any of our minors. We want to provide them training, whether it be training with our local Carl Perkins Center or training that is provided through our insurance carrier, our Brotherhood Mutual. We use a number of ways to try to train our people so that they're prepared for times that might come up that would require a quick reaction. So investing in those people, helping them understand the procedures that we have in place related to the different times and events in our church. And then, of course, we invest in a little bit of equipment, whether it be two-way radios or the pager system for our nursery area. We use some inexpensive stickers as far as a check-in and check-out procedure for our children. We have also invested a little bit more money in a camera system that allows us to keep a watch on all the entrances to our facilities, and we're able to record that in case we need to look back at that later. We've invested in just some small things that help us to carry out the procedures that we put in place. But as far as safety and security is concerned, investing in personnel, getting the right people on our team who will help us to think through the different scenarios, training those people, having them to know our procedures, and then investing in some equipment. Those are the three main areas where we have really focused our safety and security measures.
The most valuable resource we have today is our children. Unfortunately, last year, almost 797,000 children younger than the age of 18 were reported missing. 204,000 of those were family abductions. The children knew their abductor. Here are some key tips to help keep your kids safe at church or other outings where you go. One of the key things that we found that several churches are utilizing in today's times is actually a sticker program, just like this. The sticker, once you drop your child off at school or children's church, they actually tear this sticker apart. Part of it is actually a sticker that goes on your child's back, and the parent keeps the other half. It's numbered at top and bottom, and then also it's got the child's name and other pertinent information in case there's allergies or anything like that that the child care worker would need to know. When the parent comes back to pick the child up, obviously they have to present the other half of the sticker and they can pick their child up. It's good security. Also, a second thing that today we're at First Baptist Church in Paris, Tennessee, a thing that they are utilizing now are for pagers. And this paging system basically is for the younger children, the adolescent or the babies actually in church. And when the parents drop them off, the worker inside the church will actually give the parent a pager. They can take and go to the service, or whether they go to their Sunday school class or they're actually going to church. And if something happens where the infant needs attention, they can actually page the parent, and then they can come back and assist the worker with whatever need there may be. Another thing that we recommend, anytime you've got a children's area, your most valuable resource that you're going to have in this safety and security team is going to be your church members, your personnel, your volunteers. So we would recommend that you utilize those on patrol in the children's area. Put someone there, have radio communication with them, something as cheap as this or expensive as you want to get. Most of the time the communication doesn't have to be that far. It's not distance, doesn't have to hit a repeater or anything like that. As the deacons or your elders inside your church have some type of radio communication, put someone there in the area on foot patrol, keeping an eye on the kids. Also, a second thing that we would also recommend would be background checks. Unfortunately, we have scenarios all across the United States where you have pedophiles that get involved in churches and with the children. and then obviously a tragedy occurs. Someone becomes a victim. So we encourage background checks on every staff member and volunteer. There are a lot of good resources out there, and we're going to have some for you at the end of this program that you can go to and utilize. But it's absolutely critical for any staff member or any volunteer to have a thorough background check done on. The next thing I want to talk to you about is the 6-2 program. The 6-2 program is basically always have 2 workers together when you have any children together. Always keep 2 adults with any type children program, no matter what age it is, to assist and guide and lead these kids in the right direction. The second part of that is 6, is it's also recommended that any member of your church be involved in the church or be active in the church for at least 6 months before you implement them into any type program where they are actually have direction or oversight over kids or whatever type program it is. No matter whether they've grown up in the neighborhood, they've been a lifelong resident, that's a good rule of thumb to go by. 6 months of active participation inside the church before they are put over supervising someone. 6-2 theory. Another good rule of thumb is always keep a good ratio of your workers, your volunteers to your children. Sometimes during children's church or vacation Bible school, or whatever program you may be doing, it's easy to become overrun. That's a good thing at church. You want to be overrun by youth getting into your church. But when you've got one person, one adult volunteer supervising 30 kids, it's tough to keep an eye on 30 kids. One of my first jobs I ever had was a substitute teacher, and I got lucky enough to substitute a kindergarten class of 15. It was a nightmare. So a good student volunteer staff ratio to the children is also critical as well. Also, another good thing that you want to keep in mind is in children's, when they're in the nursery or in Sunday school, is to keep some type barrier, whether it's a half door or cones or whatever it may be, some type barrier so the kids can't slip out the door. It's easy to do. The kids can slip out easily when you're distracted teaching a Sunday school lesson or helping another student. If you can have some type barrier there that would cause a distraction for them to open, and you would know if anyone is leaving the room while you're in there. Another critical component of your security at church can be your camera system. It can be one of your most expensive as well. You can go to somewhere as simple as Walmart and have some of your church members install something, or you can go to more an elaborate scheme where you go to a professional company and have them installed. It's very important to have them in the correct locations to cover not only children's areas, but all areas, whether it's a playground, parking lot, sanctuary, wherever it may be. One of the most common things that we have in churches across the U.S. are slip and fall cases. So it can be very beneficial, not only for security purposes, but for other liability purposes as well. Make sure the areas that the cameras are covering are well lit. Make sure they're pointed at a good angle so that they cover the best area that you can cover with that, utilizing that camera system. Also, make sure sometimes they can actually be installed where they're motion activated, and make sure they have a good recording system that's going to be kept for a period of time, 30 to 45 days or something along that lines. The last tip that I have for the safety of the children in the church is don't hesitate to call 911 and know when to call it. If an emergency does happen, if a child does become lost, whatever the emergency may be, whether it's a playground accident or something child's missing, unaccounted for, go ahead and call 911. Get law enforcement involved as quickly as you can. It's okay for us to respond to a false call, or it's okay for us to respond and everything be okay by the time we get here. A lot of times in these situations, time is of essence. So go ahead and give us a call. Don't be afraid, and make sure someone does. Designate you call 911. And make sure somebody does that, and we'll be here to help. We all want to go to church, and we all want to have a great time. Unfortunately, in today's societies, we do have to take precautions. And being a part of a safety and security team can be a great asset to your church and your church community. So get involved. Try to be a part of it. 3 key things, like I said on the very front end of this program. Number 1, pick a good leader. Number 2, look at your risk and vulnerabilities within your church. And number 3, train. Train and train. I can't say it enough to know that when something does happen, you'll be able just to react automatically to your training. And never be afraid to call 911 or ask for law enforcement's help, no matter what the emergency may be. They're there to help you out no matter what the situation is. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you got some good training tips out of this. And if we can ever help, again, don't hesitate to call the Henry County Sheriff's Office.